Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on this channel, and hope you have had a happy new year. I'm going to give a rundown of the models for this week, as we have multiple storm systems that we're going to be tracking here, and so we're getting into a pretty active weather pattern for the southern United States. So I want to do a video kind of running down here what the expectations are, what the models are showing for this week. And so I'm going to start uploading these kinds of videos, usually probably about once a week or so. Just to kind of give an idea of where the models are showing, and what my expectations are for the week. So the time frames that we're going to be watching here mostly are going to be Wednesday across the southern and southeastern states, and also Friday night into Saturday across much of the same area. So kind of across the lower Mississippi Valley, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, and much of the southeastern states. And so I hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, leave a like and subscribe, and we're going to get started. So first, before I dive into the models here, I want to just kind of go over some of the observations, just to kind of get our bearings straight here and see what we are looking at. So this is a 300 millibar map, valid for about 6 p.m. Monday evening. So this is a 300 millibar chart, and we're looking for the jet stream. So the jet stream the subtropical jet is pretty active here across the southern U.S. Here we have one branch of the jet over here across the desert southwest, and then a second branch of the jet here that's kind of over the southeastern states and up into the Atlantic Ocean. So the subtropical jet here originates from the tropical Pacific here, so that's pretty decent indication of the El Nino that we are in. So El Ninos are pretty well known for active subtropical jet this time of year. So moving down to the 500 millibar chart, we have a pretty nice upper air disturbance here over the east coast here, and then we have our next system that we're watching over the desert southwest here that's getting its act together. So this is the trough that we're going to be watching, and that's going to be taking off to the east here over the next couple of days towards the Texas Gulf Coast, and then into the southeastern states by Wednesday. So our surface pattern that we have for tonight, we have a pretty decent high pressure system over the lower Mississippi Valley, and so that is keeping a pretty nice continental polar air mass across much of the eastern half of the U.S. Our cold front here is entrenched into the Gulf of Mexico, and so that has brought down the continental polar air mass down into the southeastern states. So we can also look at our surface observations here, and we have temperatures in the 20s and 30s across pretty much most of the eastern half of the country here. So pretty calm and chilly night for much of the eastern half of the U.S. And so let's take a look at a satellite view for this evening. And so this is the mid-level water vapor imagery overlaid with our 500 millibar pattern here. So this is going to show our first upper air disturbance here that is kind of over the east coast, and that's going to be moving on out into the Atlantic Ocean here in the next day or so. So it's not going to be really impacting the United States all that much. And so this is our next upper level wave that we are watching. And so this upper air disturbance here is going to be moving on to the east here over the next couple of days. And so that is going to be our next system that we're watching. And then even beyond this storm system, we're going to be watching a third one, or second one, if you will, that will be impacting much of the same areas over the weekend. So now that we kind of know where we stand right now, let's dive into the models. So we're going to start off with the GFS model. And so this is the latest 18Z run from this afternoon. And so this is valid. This chart is valid for Monday night at 6 p.m. And so initializing things pretty nicely. We have our upper air disturbance here over the east coast, and then we have our next disturbance here that is going to be chugging along here across the southern United States over the next few days. So we're going to go forward here to Wednesday morning, and so this is going to be our shortwave trough here that is over the lower Mississippi Valley. And so this is the storm system that we're going to be watching for the middle of this week. So down at the surface here, we got a surface low that is going to be developing over the northern Gulf as a result from that upper level trough. And so this is mostly going to be locally heavy rainfall for much of the Gulf Coast for starting on the day Wednesday. And so then as we go into the afternoon on Wednesday, this low pressure kind of slowly moves along here over the central and northern Gulf of Mexico. And so this surface low here is in a pretty favorable spot actually for a winter weather threat for much of the southern U.S. But the problem here is that the surface temperatures are going to be pretty warm. They're going to be, or at least not cold enough for snow. We're going to have temperatures here across the southeastern states. For much of the southeastern states, temperatures will be in the 40s during the afternoon hours. And also the air is going to be pretty dry. So there's going to be this dry layer down at the surface. And so we might have some precipitation ongoing above the surface. And once it hits this dry layer down near the surface, then that can cause something we would call evaporative cooling. So what that means is when that precipitation hits that dry layer, then that can end up cooling the environment around it, and temperatures could fall during the afternoon. And I'll show what that looks like here when we take a look at some soundings here. So this is our surface temperatures for Wednesday afternoon, and then as we go into the evening, fall a little bit here into potentially the upper 30s to low 40s. So models may have backed off here just a little bit on the amount of cooling that occurs during the afternoon. We'll have to see here. I think they were showing like mid to upper 30s last night when I was looking at it. So here is why this is important. Let me pull up a sounding here from the GFS, and I can show what this evaporative cooling kind of looks like here. So this is a forecast sounding from the GFS. Here, this red line here is your temperature. Green line is your dew point as you go up into the atmosphere. So let's pay attention here down in the low levels here, in the lowest about 2 kilometers here. This is our dry layer that we're going to be looking at here. And so as we go forward here in the next 3 hours, this is 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Here is 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So you see how this dry layer here, the temperature here above the surface cools down here a little bit. And so as that precipitation is falling, it's going to be hitting that dry layer, and it's going to be evaporating here as a result from the dry air, and that could actually end up cooling the environmental temperature here down below freezing above the surface. And so that dry layer kind of erodes a little bit, and so that precipitation could fall closer down to the surface. And so if we get enough cooling here, say if our surface temperature drops here into, I don't know, about the mid 30s or something like that, that could be just cold enough here to get a rain and snow mix in northern and central Alabama. So we have to keep a close eye on surface temperatures as we go into Wednesday afternoon and into Wednesday evening. Either way, I don't think this is going to be a major winter storm threat for any part of the southern U.S., but would not be surprised if we got a few snow flurries kind of in the mix if we get enough cooling to occur during the afternoon. So that's kind of the bottom line here. We can look at another model here. Let's take a look at the European model and see if there's any consistency here. So the European model is a little bit faster with our surface pattern here. It kind of progresses things a little bit more quickly, and really the storm system kind of moves on out of here by Wednesday evening. So we wouldn't really see much precipitation at all out of the European model. So confidence here in any precipitation or any accumulations here are very, very low, and any significant snowfall accumulations is pretty unlikely, as temperatures will probably stay above freezing for much of this event. So that's kind of our first storm system here that we're watching. Otherwise, mostly just a heavy rainfall threat and maybe a few isolated storms across the Gulf Coast on Wednesday. But now let's take a look at this weekend here. So I'm going to switch back to the GFS here, and we're going to go back up to 500 millibars. So you can also already see the next storm system that we're watching here. This is the next upper air disturbance here that is going to be kicking out into the southwestern states. And by the weekend, it's going to be moving on out into pretty much taking on the same track that this storm system previously is going to be taking. So let's go forward here Let's start at Friday evening for this one. So this is 6 p.m. Friday evening, and so our shortwave here is going to be digging down here into into Texas, and this one's going to have a little bit stronger of a mass response. So let's take a look at the low-level jet here. On Friday night, we have somewhat of a low-level jet here, about 40 to 50 knots or so, but that's going to crank up here across the northern Gulf and into the Gulf Coast region. So by Saturday morning, it's going to be cranking up here to about 50 to 60 knots here. So it's going to be very efficiently transporting that warm, moist air mass from the Gulf of Mexico up into the Gulf Coast. And so this is a pretty strong storm system here. And let's go down to the surface here. This is Saturday morning, 6 a.m. So surface low in a pretty similar position, again, as the previous storm system. So it's in a pretty good spot for a winter storm threat. However, like the last storm system, this one's going to be dealing with the same issues. Surface temperatures are too warm here for any kind of winter weather threat. Here, and especially with the stronger low-level jet in place, we're going to be dealing with more of a locally heavy rainfall threat than anything else. And then maybe a few thunderstorms down there at the Gulf Coast. With the stronger low-level jet in place, I couldn't rule out a few isolated stronger storms, but instability is going to be pretty limited for this event. So I wouldn't anticipate much of a widespread severe weather threat, but could be some strong straight-line winds and locally heavy rain. So I don't think the models have quite as good of a handle on this storm system just yet, given that this system is still, about 5 days in advance or so. So there's still some discrepancies within the models, and also some disagreement among the other models as well. So we can compare this with the European model. In the European model, this is the 12Z run of the Euro, and so this is much faster with this storm system. It's pretty much on out of here, kind of impacting the Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic region by Saturday afternoon. And so those discrepancies will have to be worked out, and so that'll be worked out here in a few days. But either way, don't anticipate much of a winter weather threat for the southeastern states, maybe more so for the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic region, where temperatures would obviously be colder and be more likely to be below freezing. And then maybe a few thunderstorms possible kind of along the southeastern coast. So the bottom line here for most of the southeastern U.S., the main threats here are going to be just locally heavy rainfall from either just stratiform precipitation or if we get any stronger convection to develop in the warm sector. And so, in fact, I can even show what the rainfall forecast looks like over the next 7 days. And so this is quite a bit of rainfall that we're going to get over the Gulf Coast here. This is in the reds and yellows here. This is about 4 to 5 inches of rain expected across the Louisiana, Mississippi Gulf Coast. So that's going to be pretty beneficial rainfall for this part of the country where we're in a pretty significant drought. And even beyond that, we have in the purples here, this is at least 1 to 2 inches of rain that we're going to be expecting over the next 7 days. So much of this part of the country is going to see very beneficial rainfall to help improve the drought conditions that are ongoing. So that's all that I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.